Nah, I done grew up around some people living their life in bottles. Granddaddy had the golden flask, back no every day in Chicago. Some people like the way it feels, some people want to kill their sorrows.
Hey guys, this is Karsh. Today I'm going to be bringing y'all another Barbarian build guide. This is going to be the Lazy Boys Whirlwind build guide for Nephilim Rifts and Bounty Runs. This build is super fast, really efficient, and almost brainless to play. The way I have it set up, I literally hold one button and then I left mouse click every once in a while, and that's all we have to do here. Okay, so let's get into the gear that we're using to beef up our Whirlwind. First off, we're going to need all 6 pieces of the Wrath of the Waste set, which includes the helm, shoulders, chest, pants, gloves, and boots. We're not really worried about the 2-piece or the second part of the 4-piece since we're not going to be working Rend into this build. So the first part of the 4-piece states that while you're whirlwinding and for 3 seconds after, you're going to gain 50% damage reduction, which is really helpful. And then the 6-piece states that Whirlwind is going to gain the effect of the Dust Devil's Rune for free, and also that all Whirlwind damage is going to be increased by 3,000%. Alright, now let's go over the stat priorities that you're going to want on every piece of gear. On your helmet, you're going to want Strength, Critical Hit Chance, and Whirlwind damage. On your armor, you're going to want Strength, Vitality, and Life percent. On your pants, you're going to want Strength, Vitality, and Armor. On your boots, you're going to want Strength, Vitality, All Resist, and Whirlwind damage. On your shoulders, you're going to want Strength, Vitality, Cooldown Reduction, and Area damage. And then on your gloves, you're going to want Strength, Crit Damage, Crit Chance, and Area damage. Alright, now let's talk about the weapons that we're going to use. We're going to be using the Bolkathos set, the Solemn Vow, and Warrior's Blood, which say that your Fury regeneration is going to be increased by 15, and also that during Whirlwind, you're going to gain 45% increased attack speed and movement speed. And generally, the rolls that you're going to want on those are going to be your damage range, strength, cooldown reduction, and area damage. You could, in theory, replace cooldown reduction for percent damage, but in that case, you may not be able to keep one of our movement speed buffs that we're going to get up at all times, because we're generally going to want between 40 and 50% cooldown reduction on top of our Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac in order to keep all of our powers up all the time. And next we're going to be using Nemesis Bracers so that we can spawn champions off of pylons. Because we're using this mostly for Nephilim Rifts, it's going to give us more chances for legendaries, death breaths, and things of that nature. And the rolls you're going to want on that are going to be physical skill damage, strength, vitality, and critical hit chance. And then we're going to be using a Hellfire Amulet with the Nerves of Steel passive to give us an extra life since we are super squishy. And you're going to want the rolls on that to be physical skill damage, critical hit damage, critical hit chance, and a socket. And then for our rings, we're going to be running an Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. We're going to want that to roll with attack speed, critical hit chance, cooldown reduction, and a socket. And then the other ring we're going to be using is a Stone of Jordan. And Stone of Jordans are particularly hard to roll well because they always roll with an elemental damage range. But in theory, you're going to want physical skill damage, critical hit chance, or damage. And then the other guaranteed affix on it, which is going to be between 25 and 30% increased damage to elites. Alright, now let's look at what we're running in the cube. First off, we're going to be running a Furnace, which says gain 50% additional damage versus elites. Secondly, we're going to be using Shalanick's Chain, which gives us 40% additional damage when we cast Warcry for 10 seconds for us and our allies. And then lastly, we are going to be using a Skull Grasp. It's basically a necessity for any Whirlwind build. And it's going to give you an additional 400% damage multiplier on your Whirlwind. And keep in mind that we are running strength gems in our pants and our chest. You could, in theory, you could swap those out for diamonds if you feel like you're dying too often. This build is very squishy, so if you feel like you need to, go ahead. And then we're also running a diamond in the helm for extra cooldown reduction. Alright, now let's look at our passes and other skills. We are running, obviously, Nerves of Steel, and then we're also running Ruthless, which says you deal 40% additional damage to enemies between 30% health. It really helps clear things out. Even just whirlwinding past something, you're going to hit them 2 or 3, maybe 4 times, depending on your attack speed. So you're generally going to get anything that you pass by down in one hit, except for the Rift Guardian that's going to take you a couple seconds to beat. Next, we're going to be taking Boon of Bolkathos, which reduces the cooldown of your, we're not worried about Earthquake or Call of the Ancients, but it reduces the cooldown of your Wrath of the Berserker by 30 seconds. And then we're going to be taking Rampage, which increases your strength by 1% for 8 seconds after killing or assisting in killing an enemy. This is, if you're running Nephilim Rifts, it can be a solo build, but you can also run it in groups for bounties and group rifts and things of that nature. It's going to be a huge damage and toughness boost. And then lastly, we're going to be running Weapons Master, which says gain a bonus based on the weapon type of your main hand weapon, and we're going to be running Mighty Weapons, which is going to be 2 additional Fury per hit. And we do have a problem maintaining Fury in this build because we are constantly spamming our skills. Sprint, obviously, which every time you cast, you have to waste 20 Fury, and then in spamming our skills, we're also going to be spamming Bloodshed, which is going to take another 20 Fury, and we are getting 20 back from Warcry and from Threatening Shout, but we seem to use more than we gain because we're constantly whirlwinding, which burns a bunch of Fury, and then we're constantly spamming skills also. And then we're going to be taking Battle Rage with Bloodshed, which says enter a rage which increases your damage by 10% and your critical hit chance by 3%, lasts for 2 minutes. And then deal damage equal to 20% of your recent critical hits to enemies within 20 yards every 1 second. This is going to be a huge damage boost, obviously with the 10 and 3, but it's also going to be amazing in the fact that you're going to be doing a bunch of damage and moving very quickly. So there'll be times where you'll go into a mob, and because you did so much damage on the last mob and you were moving so quickly, Bloodshed will immediately dispose of the next mob that you run into. It's really, really nice. And next we're going to be taking Warcry with Veteran's Warning, which says unleash a rallying cry to increase armor for you and your allies within 100 yards by 20% for 2 minutes, and also increase your dodge chance by 30% while affected by Warcry. And also, because we're running Shalanick's Chain in the cube, we're going to be getting 40% increased movement speed on top of these abilities already. But these in themselves are really good toughness boosts, so you're definitely going to want that. And then we're going to be taking Wrath of the Berserker with the Insanity Rune, which is just a great overall skill to have. It increases critical hit chance, attack speed, dodge chance, and movement speed by a bunch. And then also with the Insanity Rune, we're getting 50% increased damage, which is another huge damage multiplier. After that, we're going to be taking Threatening Shout with Falter, which says shout with great ferocity, causing enemies within 25 yards to falter and take 25% increased damage from all sources for 6 seconds. This does have a 10-second cooldown, but since we have a bunch of cooldown already, and we're going to be taking our Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, this is going to reset very, very quickly, so you can almost use this in every mob that you come to, and it's just another damage multiplier on top of the ones that we already have. And then we're going to be taking Sprint with the Marathon Rune for increased movement speed. All the Marathon Rune does is it gives you 10% additional movement speed on top of Sprint, and it lasts for an additional 1 second. And for our damaging skill, we're going to be taking Whirlwind with Blood Funnel, which says deliver multiple attacks to everything in your path for 340% weapon damage. And then we have our 3000% multiplier, our 400% multiplier, and all of our passive and skill multipliers on top of that. And then with the Blood Funnel Rune, we're getting critical hits restore 1% of your maximum life, and also while whirlwinding, you move at 100% movement speed. Now that we've gone over the skills, let's look at what we're doing with our Paragon. I take Maximum Fury because we do have quite an issue maintaining Fury. With this extra Fury, it makes it a little easier. I have a pull of a little bit more than 180 with the Maximum Fury on both my weapons, and 50 points in my Paragon. Next, we're going to be maxing out our movement speed to 25%. If you roll movement speed on your boots, you're going to want to take less because there's a hard 25% movement speed cap from Paragon and stat rolls. And then everything else we're dumping into strength. Unless you find that it's harder for you to survive, then you can pump some into vitality if you feel like you need to. But I generally don't have an issue surviving, so I just dump everything into strength. And then for offense, we're going to want to take critical hit chance, and then damage, and then cooldown reduction, and then attack speed. For defense, you're going to want life, resist all, armor, and then life regen. And then for utility, you're going to want life per hit, area damage, gold find, and then resource cost reduction. And also, guys, for your belt, you do have a few options. You could take a Witching Hour like I do for the increased attack speed and critical hit damage. You could also take a Vigilant belt for extra cooldown. Or if you really want to, and you feel like you're having a really hard time surviving, you could also take a Pride of Cassius with the Ignore Pain extension roll on it, and then swap out Threatening Shout for Ignore Pain with either Ironhide or Ignorance Bliss. But I wouldn't recommend that because if you drop Threatening Shout, not only are you losing the damage multiplier, but you're also losing the Fury regeneration that Threatening Shout gives you because Ignore Pain is not a generator. So it's going to make it a little harder to maintain your Fury. And now for what I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Like I said, this is a Lazy Boys Whirlwind guide. How we're going to do that is we're going to be using the Numlock trick. And for those of you that don't know what that is, basically you just go over to your options, you go to key bindings, you scroll down to your action bar skills. There should be 4 of them, and then you want to set your action bar skills key 1 to the skills that you're going to want to spam. And then key 2, you want to set those to your numpads 1, 2, 3, and 4. Once you have those all applied, you're going to want to turn on your numlock, hold your key binding, and then turn your numlock off. Keep in mind that you can only do this with one skill at a time, so you will have to do it with each one of your skills. Turn numlock on, hold key 2, turn numlock off, and so on. And as long as you don't turn numlock on and then hit the key that you've already set to numlock, it won't turn that skill off. And then while you're whirlwinding, how you're going to be spamming these skills is as you're holding your right click to whirlwind, all you have to do without letting go of your right click is tap your left click and it'll activate all your skills. What you're going to want to do is activate that every 4 seconds because that's how long sprint is going to be active for. So as soon as sprint's about to fall off, just tap your left click, reactivate all your skills, and keep going. And then lastly, for our legendary gems, we're going to be taking Bane of the Trapped, which says increase damage against enemies under the effect of control impairing effects by X, depending on the level. And then at level 25, gain an aura that reduces the movement speed of enemies within 15 yards by 30%. So it gives you the effect for free. Next, we're going to be taking Bane of the Powerful, which says gain 20% increased damage for X amount of seconds after killing an elite pack, and then gain 15% increased damage versus elites, and take 15% reduced damage from them. And then lastly, we're going to be taking the Taeguk, which says gain X amount increased damage for 1.5 seconds when you spend resource on a channeling skill. Whirlwind is a channeling skill. This effect stacks up to 10 times, and then at level 25, you gain 2% increased armor for every stack. So that's 20% armor after you have your 10 stacks up, which is another huge toughness boost. Alright guys, that's all I got for you today. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope you enjoy the build and the rift, and you guys have a great one. See you later.
Nah, I done grew up around some people living their life in bottles. Granddaddy had the golden flask, back no bigger day in Chicago. Some people like the way it feels, some people